In this video, I will discuss the Sponsored Project Lifecycle Framework that we use in vPrad. This is a helpful way to understand a sponsored project from conception of an idea to the closeout of a project. I will outline 5 stages of the lifecycle and identify some key terms along the way. As I go, consider where you fit in the lifecycle. Whether you're a research administrator or a member of the study team, you may contribute to one or all of these stages. The first way to consider the life cycle is a circle divided by the receipt of the grant award or the fully signed contract. There are 2 stages clearly in the pre-award and 2 stages clearly in the post-award. The project startup phase involves the transition between these 2. These terms, pre-award and post-award, are research administration terms that are common at VUMC and other similar research institutions. The other way to understand the life cycle is this timeline approach that we use more often in vPrad. The number blocks on this slide are intended to show the relative time at each phase. Finding funding is the first phase, and that can happen quickly, probably in weeks if the investigator doesn't already have a sponsor in mind. Proposal development can be anywhere from weeks for a typical federal grant submission to several months for large, complex proposals that involve multiple study sites or research partners. The startup phase can vary from weeks to around a month if the award or contract is in hand. Award management is obviously the longest phase and often lasts 3 to 5 years for federally funded projects. Closeout lasts anywhere from 30 to 90 days depending on the due dates of certain tasks like final financial reporting. To anyone who has gone through a closeout, it probably feels like there's never enough time. In the rest of this presentation, we'll go into each of these phases in more detail. In the finding funding phase, this is where you decide who is a good partner or sponsor for your project. You need to determine what activity you want funded. Federal sponsors may fund very different projects than industry sponsors, and each is willing to pay for different kinds of project expenses in different ways. This phase is about finding the right match. Investigators may do whatever their mentor or advisor did before them. Investigators may also learn about opportunities through colleagues within their department or in their discipline. We at VUMC also have central office resources to help with this process. Our Office of Sponsored Programs specializes in federal funding and can assist with those kinds of opportunities. The VUMC Office of Research can support a range of sponsor types with a wide variety of resources, including a database of funding opportunities that VUMC subscribes to. That database allows investigators to identify criteria and receive regular emails with opportunities that fit their criteria. The VUMC Office of Corporate and Foundation Relations is particularly helpful when the target sponsor is a private foundation. CFR can add a lot of value when applying to a sponsor that may not have a published or standardized process like the federal government. Perhaps the foundation has eccentric needs and desires for the application, and CFR can be aware of these and advise and assist investigators new to those organizations. The next step in this phase is to determine who will write the scope of work. Perhaps the PI has clearly formed an idea, or perhaps they're willing to work for an industry sponsor with their own ideas for a study. These 2 categories are referred to as investigator-initiated and sponsor-initiated studies. Finally, it's important to ensure that the respective missions of the investigator and the funding source are in alignment. VUMC is an academic institution and needs to publish our research results. We can't work with sponsors who don't share or aren't willing to accommodate our mission of publication. This is just one example of mission alignment, but it's an important step in the process. Once the investigator settles on an opportunity to pursue, they start building the proposal. If the opportunity has written guidelines, there are a few critical items to look for. First is eligibility. This is the type of institution or type of investigator who can apply. For example, there are early career opportunities that are only available to investigators who are less than a specific number of years from earning their final degree. The opportunity may also be limited to institutions of higher education, in which case a nonprofit hospital like VUMC is ineligible to apply. So it's important to check any eligibility criteria. The deadline is the due date of the application. These are often a date and a time, so it's important to pay attention to time zones when you're reading the guidelines. There may also be budget constraints in the opportunity. What level of budget detail is required for the application, and are there any costs that won't be covered by the sponsor? The modality of submission refers to how we submit the application. Is there an online portal? Is it submitted as an email attachment? Does it require institutional signature? These are very important considerations. It's important to look over any guidelines or documentation for the application process to look for any other restrictions or requirements. At VUMC, our administrators summarize these important pieces of information for our investigators. To create a proposal, it's also important to identify the individual or roles essential for completing the project. Do you need to recruit investigators or collaborators at other institutions? This requires a lot of administrative coordination and should be started as soon as possible. At VUMC, we divide proposals into two overarching components, the business section and the science section. The business section includes the budget justification, biosketches, and any compliance documentation. The components need to be reviewed by central offices and institutional representatives before the application can be submitted under VUMC cover. The science section includes the scientific components of the application that no one in a central office is qualified to review. At VUMC, we don't ask for these documents ahead of time. We make sure the research team knows about them and has placeholders in their application, but we allow the investigator to continue working on the science sections until moments before submission, if they so desire. Phase 3 is project startup. On average, nationally, the success rate for federal grant applications is around 20%, or 1 in 5 applications are successful. If the investigator is fortunate enough to be funded, they will enter the project startup phase. For National Institutes of Health, there might be a just-in-time or JIT process where the budget is updated and other compliance documents are finalized, such as approval for human subjects research. As I mentioned, the success rate for applications is 1 in 5. That's why we wait until there is a reliable indication that an award will occur before we pursue the compliance documentation, because this can take a substantial amount of work from the study team and administrators. For other sponsors, there may be a brief period of negotiation around the details of the project. Then, the central finance office at VUMC starts to assist. VUMC Finance has a series of steps they refer to as the ABCs of project startup. To do this, you need the award notice or a reliable assurance that the award or grant is imminent. You also need a budget that's been approved by the sponsor or has sufficient detail for finance to create the final step, which is a center number. The center number is like a checking account for your project and will be used to track the project funding and expenses. When you have the ABCs together, finance considers you ready to start the project. Finally, during the project startup phase, the study team should plan their administrative and financial processes that will keep the project and compliance on track over the next phase of the project, which is award management. Phase 4 is award management. This is the ongoing maintenance and management of a project. At VUMC, we expect administrators and study teams to review the financial center and ledger at least monthly. This may include spending projections or moving inappropriate expenses off the project. Regular review also includes personnel management and ensuring that the people included in the proposal are meeting any commitments they have made in terms of effort towards the project or deliverables. These monthly reviews may uncover changes to the project that require prior approval from the sponsor. It's important to inform the appropriate central offices as soon as possible so sponsor approval can be requested within the required period of time. Most projects also include regular reporting of scientific progress, financials, and any important discoveries. These reports and updates may require certification by VUMC central offices, like Office of Sponsored Programs or Finance. The last phase of the life cycle is award closeout. As you approach the end date of the project, say 90 days before the end, it's important for the study team to consider whether they need more time. Federal projects are often able to receive extensions. If the study doesn't require an extension, then the study team will need to wind down operations and collect final invoices from any vendors or collaborators at other institutions. Getting these invoices will allow VUMC to finalize the accounting for the project and prepare any final financial reports the sponsor may require. As with progress reports, the final reports often require central office certification or signature, although the final scientific report is unlikely to require such sign-off. Lastly, the administrators will want to ensure that all documentation is organized and preserved. People take other jobs or retire, and VUMC is required to maintain project documents for years after closeout, 7 years for federal projects. Throughout this video, I've alluded to VUMC central offices who provide support and help ensure compliance for sponsored projects. I'll wrap up this video by showing you some of the many central offices at VUMC who support sponsored activities. I won't read these off, but they cover everything from proposal submission support to patenting to shared scientific equipment and financial accounting. These offices are here to ensure VUMC has the experience and expertise to help investigators from their first grant proposal until they are experienced managers of multi-center clinical studies, if that's their ambition. If you found this video helpful, I encourage you to consider attending Intro to VPRAD, which is a 4-hour introduction to research administration at VUMC. Simply type VUMC VPRAD into your browser search bar to find out more.